What's up, everybody? I hope you're having a beautiful, beautiful start to your week. It's me, Z8phyR, and we are coming at you with a new breakdown tutorial of my newest track, EP called Night. It's all part of my Dream Colors collection. You can go to my Bandcamp or my website and check it out here. So I'm going to talk about how I made it and break it down for you guys. And hopefully this can help anybody out with how to make some music in the future. So this project file itself will be available on my website afterwards. If you'd like to get it from there, you can. But other than that, we will start into it. If I'll play the chorus here, and we'll go from there. Okay. So yeah, this is Night Colors, and that's pretty much the whole entirety of the song. And I want to talk about a little bit how I made this, the idea behind it all, and of course I'll go about each of these elements here and talk about how I've done it. So Night Colors itself is all kind of revolving around this little piano and a piano line, and it gets supports from the guitar. It's a little guitar sound that comes in. So that's the whole idea behind this, and the theme of it is to be really simple as possible, and I really like it because I think it turned out great from from the idea to the theme to the execution, because simplicity really can make a lot of elements poke out that was like unintentional. So yes, we'll start with the piano here, and you can listen here to how this sounds. So it's basically this little melody line right here that kind of repeats back and forth. And then it kind of does that over and over again, but I add little variations at the end. So as you kind of keep it going, but it'll there's little variations, but the whole entirety of this like melodic structure is pretty much the same. So and it's not very like up and down with spacing. It's only like maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 notes really that comprises the entirety of this melody. So keep that in mind when when you're designing things. You don't have to use a lot of like a lot of notes and fancy stuff to make this a powerful kind of emotional melody here. So and how I work this into my mixer here, the mixing is actually really light. I can't believe I was so light with it, but there's EQ, and then there's some compression here. Let's play this, and you can see the compression is real light. It's not like heavily compressed, where I'm just simply really crunching down the attack of the piano more than anything else. And this is because like the piano attack itself could be a little bit too much for whenever you decide to whenever you do mix it in. So it's just a little bit light compressed, and it's up to you if you want to do this or not. But if you do, you probably want to use a maybe like some short attack here, and a little bit maybe a longer release to let more of the tail kind of come through. But this is entirely up to you, your personal preference, and you should definitely compress and edit your settings while you're mixing, so while it's playing. But otherwise, yeah, it's just some light compression, and then we have some post EQ again, because I wasn't fully happy with the way it was EQ'd the first time, and then it's sent out to the reverb about 50%. And that's really it for as far as it goes. But if you look at the MIDI itself, you can see though there's a little variation in the velocity here, And that's important to know, that this kind of humanizes our melody a little bit more, so that it's not just as robotic sounding. So be sure you are humanizing, or and I done this by this Alt R, and oops, is that right? Yeah, Alt R, yes. And then this is the randomizer. It might be like that, but you just turn that off. And you can randomize these volumes a little bit here, and I would suggest playing around with speeds and stuff until you find one that you like, or that looks kind of a little bit more humanized or organic. Next up here is going to be our chords. A lot of people like chords. The whole idea for this song, I was gonna do like a tutorial on how to make chords, and then I started making this song. I abandoned the tutorial and just launched into the song. So I will explain it now, I guess. But okay, we'll start with the chords here, and we'll go from there. Let me turn off stuff. Let's go here. Okay, so everything should be on, and then let's go to our chords. So, I mean, essentially, it's kind of following the bass line. Those bottom notes are. It's personal preference if you want to add those. Sometimes those can be problematic when you're starting to work with your bass line as well. Just keep it in mind. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Entirely dependent on what you're doing with your mix. But the meat of the chord, so to speak, this is our root note here. Is basically though these three notes. So C, E, F sharp, G sharp, and then probably B. So it's kind of like just following the scale here, and that's it. There's not really like much else. I don't really know, like, these chords are really grouped together. So I mean, you could spread them apart here, and be a little fancy to kind of get to know what you're doing. But really, I do chords a lot by ear. So you kind of get the initial. This is my initial chord, which is essentially just a minor. And with it's a minor plus something, but my goodness, I'm not good at knowing like exactly what it is. But if you are music theory savvy, you can figure out what type of chord this is relatively quick. Regardless, I take that initial setting here, and then this is how I apply it with that. And a lot of the thing is, like, the top portion of my chords will stay the same, but I will do things like I will kind of let the bottom or the middle portion of my chords go up or down a little bit. And then you see there's a little bit of variation at the kind of the end. So this is the end of my 12th bar, which you can kind of think on, and it's 12 bars because I have the intro portion plus the like meat or the ride of the verse chorus portion all inbuilt. So this is actually the 4th bar. So at the end of this little 4th bar right here, I have a little variation with the top melody, and with the chords going into the top, that leads into like the next little section. So it's not like just static all the way across. There is a little bit of movement, but it's not crazy movement. It's sort of difficult to kind of explain in a short, like alongside of it all. But if you want some more detail or in depth about like preparing your chords, I will do another tutorial here just based on building chord progressions in a more meaningful way, if that's something that you might struggle with. But essentially though, the chord progression is a simple one. Okay, it follows this little bass line here, and these are like little simple variations to it, but nothing much. Okay, the idea is still keeping it simple, and you can see I keep it as simple as possible. And then what it looks like I did a lot, but you kind of delete this section over here, and then you can just copy the section across, and you can make little secondary edits. So now on bar 8 through 12, you can add a little bit more of a variation to the chords. So you can see that's what I did. I think, did I do that? Yeah, you can see that's what I did. Like, this is bar 5 through 6, 7, and this is 9, 10, 11 here, and they're a little bit different with the chording patterns. So you can see like there's a little bit of variation to the way that chord went out. And that was the reasoning for this like long length. You know, you could kind of do it however long you want, but that's the idea is, you know, you're going to add a little bit of variations at the end of your little 4-bar sections. All right. Start thinking about like that. Start kind of looking at music in that light too. Split it into little sections. It makes it a lot more approachable. So the next portion here will be the layer of the chord, which is designed just to kind of enhance or give a little bit more presence to the chords itself. So it's just a silence patch here that I just kind of heavily edited. And in fact, before we do that, let me go back to the first chord here and talk about the patch and how I designed it, because a lot of people want to learn how to make these kind of chords for their own tracks. So this is something I just made up. The thing about sound designing this here is okay, we can clone this, is that we don't really it's no real rhyme or reason to the to what you're doing, except you're you know, paying attention to like a few specific key elements in the sound design itself. Let me try to free up some room here, and then let's hide this. All right. So basically you can look here. I usually rotate the pluck down. I give it a lot of unison, and I play with these little pan and phase knobs till it sounds good. Volume obviously matters. Pluck and your pluck, frequency, and amount is the big deal here. So you just keep playing with stuff until you get it to the way you want it to sound. But you know, you can do a little bit more to it. So this how this one was designed is basically the same way with all these settings, you know, and I could copy them over if I wanted to. But it's kind of one of those things where it's really just not like, it's really not a big deal, because you just kind of do it by ear. So these settings aren't 100%. They actually change depending on what I'm doing in the track. For example, if the track needs a little bit more mid presence, I'll mess with the mid timbres and harmless a little bit more. Or maybe it needs a little bit more top end, I'll mess with the top end present a little bit more on designing my sound. So while these are like good guidelines to follow, know that every sound should be unique to your track. You shouldn't just use the same sound, so to speak, without at least an intention. But the intention of this chord was to be a more like a main layer of the pluck, an aggressive top end to poke through the mix as it plays. There is some delay on this, and there's a little bit of chorus. We can close this one. There's a little bit of chorus here. I added about 15%, a little bit of delay, 25-30% delays added to this. And then we've got a little bit of compression. This is all inbuilt inside of it all, but you can recreate this with any third-party plugin if you wanted to. So don't get discouraged about like these settings. They're completely just based upon my personal ears and what I felt was good. All right. And then as the only thing that matters with these lines, automations here, is that I automated I automated the a low pass filtered the chords, because I wanted them to kind of fade away as you go into the bridge. You come back into the beat, and then you go back out. So this is automated. That's what these are. And then it's also gain automation, volume automation, whatever you want to call it, inside of this as well. And that's essentially it. And then when we take it to the mixer, it has some EQ on it. This Fruity Send is my volume automation, and then this Love filter is my low pass filter. And then there's some side chain on it, and these settings are pretty much whatever I feel like is good for the sound at the time. I can't really say, oh, it's exactly that, because it could be different. All right, now the second chords. Now we're on the second chords here. And what I did here was kind of the same, except what I did was I used a preset and just kind of edited it instead. You see it's really low. You can barely hear it. And this is just to give it a little bit more warmth or you know, body to the chords themselves as they're played. So I could do a little example here, if it works, hopefully. that's without. And that's what, so you can see like it gave it just that little bit more kind of boost almost in volume here, without being too overly aggressive into your mix. And that's really it. The way that it's laid out is I copied the top portion of that other chord progression. So if we go back to 1, I copied the top portion, come over here, and it's just the top portion. And I don't even think I did anything special. So, you know, that's literally just a top layer that I used, which was not really a top layer. This is the main layer of it. The other chord is more like the bass line of it. Like, you literally don't even need it in so many ways. A lot of people won't even use a bass line if they don't want to, because sometimes you just don't need it. But in this case, I felt like I needed it. So it's just meant to kind of accompany the chords. And that's really how the chords are even laid out. Next up here will be our arps, and I really think this is probably my favorite part of this entire song, how it all kind of comes together, because the arp is the introduction of this track entirely. So if you take this out, it kind of like defeats, I couldn't even have the track without it. And see, the whole idea here, I'll show you here. It follows the same chord progression. You know, it kind of just follows the scale a little bit here. And it's just a silence patch that I made. Very simple one. Here it is right here. It's a very simple one here. And what I did was I kind of used, you know, I used the arpeggiation function, and just kind of tailored the settings. But as far as how the sound itself was created, it's very simple. There's nothing done on the second part. Part A, just 4 voices, a little bit of detune, +1 an octave. You heavily edit your ADSR envelopes. So the amp envelope is edited, and then your mod envelope will be for the cutoff here, which is edited here. Give it a little bit of warm drive. And of course, I really love delays. So of course, I'm going to give it a delay. And then we're going to throw it to the verb here, about 50% or so. However much you give it to the verb is dependent on whatever the element is. Some elements can't use that much, some do. This one, in this case, it did. So it's like, you know, the whole entirety of how this ARP is made is very simple, but it's so powerful. I love it. So, and it is kind of, it's just a drone too. It's just a drone chord, and it's supposed to be just literally like a accompany to the, you know, the track. It's kind of like where the whole track can exist. So this is kind of a way you can work like drone sounds into your track, if you're ever curious about that. And then and then this one, I think it's just low passed. Nope, it's I think it's actually high passed, actually. So yeah, it's high pass. Yep. And that's fine. I filtered and high passed it into the mix just to give it like, because high passing it makes it sound like it's disappearing further away. And if you low pass it, it's kind of like it's going into like the next room, you know, like it's kind of like you can hear elements of it steal as it fades away, where high passing is like it's going off into the distance, you know. So it's just kind of personal preference, but I tastefully added it into the mix how I wanted it to. The bridge part of this ARP, I raised it up a little bit of an octave. Pretty much take the G and brought it up. That's all I did. And that added a little bit of a unique variance to when the bridge comes in. And I really like that part of doing that with the ARPs, because, you know, it didn't even take much of a change to add that much of an impact to your song. So this is just a simple way of looking at adding a little bit of variation without doing too much work, so to speak, like recreating a whole different section, you know. So that's really it for the ARPs. There's really not much else I did besides, you know, mix it in how I wanted to. I did give it a little bit of stereo, just a little bit, and then a little bit of side chain, which everything is basically side chain except for maybe like the melodic element. And then of course I sent it to the verb. Everything's kind of sent to the same verb here, and however much you send it, it's completely up to you. Next up is the pad. So basically with the pads here, it's just a Nexus pad that I picked up and I found and decided to use. So you can see I just picked up a pound one that I liked. We tailored the release a little bit, turned down the cutoff on the master filter, so I enabled that. And then you mix it into your mixer track. So I go over here to the mixer track, and you can see a little bit what's going on. Oh, let me just do it. You can see a little bit about what I EQ'd here. It's just like, yeah, EQing is all kind of personal taste, so I really don't go too in depth over that unless you just really want to know something specific. Let me know in the comments, ask the question if you got a question about it. Otherwise, I'll just keep it going. So yeah, then it's a low pass filter here applied to this as well. You can tell it's low pass because this is the low part of the pass filter. And then it's of course is given to a generous amount of verb. A lot of the big things about when you open up these patches is make sure you disable the internal effects. And then we added some stereo shaping on it, and of course we applied the side chain to it as well. After that, yeah, the notes here is as you can see, it's essentially two notes, and then I add a little bit of character by adding these little top notes on top of the just to kind of add flavor to the melody. This will kind of keep it a little bit more interesting, so to speak, but without it being too much variation inside of it. Again, it's kind of a personal preference. You can do what you want really with pads. They're kind of the most freest thing you could use inside of, I think, production, especially melodic progressive house. Then we're going to go ahead and go to this guitar melody here. And the thing about the guitar melody, so what this melody is all about here is really just accentuating or accompanying the piano. So if I can disable this all correctly, it's supposed to make sense in relationship to the piano, and that's how I designed this whole kind of melody here. I don't know why I just do that instead. Sometimes I'm even myself, you know. So you can kind of see how it's following along. It's following along the melody line that's created by the piano. And that's exactly why I did it. And I thought it was really cool because, well, you know, this kind of allows you to add little characters to different melodic sections, different notes inside of your melody. Keep that in mind. And then how I made this happen is, well, this is just a guitar patch through Nexus. But you can see, though, I trimmed the cutoff down, and we also turned the release up. This is also legatoed. You can go to the modulation here and turn the legato on, and then we have the internal delay added on here because this is kind of easy to mix with and make. It's not really a big deal. You could do this internally, or you can even do it externally inside of the mixer chain as well. Your choice. EQ, of course, love filter, which is just a low pass, side chain, and then of course sent to the verb as well. And that is it really for the melody. I do have the filter cut off going in, and it doesn't really change much for the bridge, but like what happens for the bridge, instead of the main melody playing, I kind of turn it into like an upper portion. Do I? Oh, let me go check. Might have muted it. Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah, it's just really low. But yeah, it's just like a it's because I have it filtered. It's because the pad version of this is it's like a, you know, and it's literally the same thing, same melody here with just a different sound layer chosen to represent it. In which case I used an expand patch. In fact, I even used the things that was included on purpose because I thought they sounded fine. So you can see you can still break your rules of like disabling and enabling internal effects if it fits with your mix. You don't have to be so, you know, committed to it, I guess, you know, like it doesn't have to, you don't have to be so strict about it. But yeah, that's really it there for the melodies, and it's filtered in as well, of course. And the same thing, I have some EQ going, and then it's a low pass filter, and I even have that sent out to Verb as well to blend it in with the whole Verb of the entire track. Uh, we'll get to the bass here, which is really enjoyable for me. I pretty much design basses very similarly because I enjoy it. That's just really all there is to it. So basically, that's the baseline. How I design this, it's in a harmless patch, you know, that I made, and well, I usually make them all pretty much similar depending on what I'm looking for. If I want like a plucky style of a bass, I'll make it like this. If I want a more like a smoother one, you know, where it just kind of accompanies it, I'll do some different settings here. But how I make this, usually, yeah, even though it's a bass, I still will crank up unison and stuff like that on here. Typically what I do, I didn't really do it for this. I did actually, I opened up a new project and did some external stuff on it because I thought it was going to get heavy. I don't know what I was thinking. But whatever, however it goes though, you can apply your compression, your mid side if you're looking to mid side it from your mixer here, and then deal with it over here into your groups. But it's really nothing like super complicated. Like once you make a pluck or something like that, you will be able to make anything. And how I made this whole bass, you know, happen really is yeah, like I said, unison pluck, the frequency and the amount, and then you're gonna go ahead and mess with your side chain. The thing about the side chain is you kind of want to like mix it into you know, make it more looser or tighter depending on your vibe of the beat here. So we could play this in context. And what you kind of notice here is I have a little bit of a longer release. You know, it's kind of like, oh man, it's almost half a second. You know, it's quarter of a second, anyways. And this kind of gives it more of a lazier kind of come back into the beat itself. And it's just a personal preference of how I like to do my side chains, but you can kind of do them however you like. Um, and that's really it. Once you go into the sustain portion of it where I kind of just sustain out the notes just for the bridge. This is just a tactic that I love to do as well. A lot of this is just personal preference, you know. But yeah, in the bridge portion, I like to kind of slow things down. And then how you kind of can slow things down without really slowing down the tempo, which you can do as well. But you just sustain out notes a little bit more and slow down their intervals a little bit here. And this kind of gives the illusion the track is slowed down a lot more. You could literally slow it down to just one note for a while. And I've done that, and I like it. It's actually cool. But this is where it gives you a lot of, you know, kind of overall, you know, freedom, really, you know, inside of it all. And that's really it for all the melodic elements of the track here. There might be other little things that I've missed or haven't mentioned. So if you do have a question about something specific, just let me know in the comments. And then I will try to address that either in another video or at least reply back to you to let you know. And next up here, I will talk a little bit about the drums, what I've done and how I used what I used here Basically, I used Ad Brown Progressive House Essentials. You can look over. I use this pack to kind of create most of this. The majority of this, I might have kind of went around and used a different amount of things. But basically, when I kind of approach mixing into my drums, I do trim the fade out knobs here and the pitch amount to kind of tune it by ear into my track. Sometimes I will even edit this. You can edit this in as well and detect the pitch, and it lets you know what type of kick it is. You know that you can maybe pitch it a little bit up or down into your mix to make it more tonality into your mix. So I used that. I grabbed the first kick I found really, and then I EQ'd it in. And really, it's kind of a longer kick here, but it's okay. It's more like how it fits into the mix. But we do merge it for the most part. If we don't have to always do this, but I typically just do this with just kind of habitually, but I will turn it back if I think that I've over monoed it, if that even makes sense to you guys. But if I've like kind of put it too much in mono, where I might have reduced some presence of the kick that I wanted to hear, I will trim it back a little bit as well. And then as far as what an EQ, nothing special. I did do a wide dip into the mids. I just felt like there were too much here. When I do that, I tend to layer, but you don't have to always layer. So for this one, I did not layer extra kicks, but when I do, once I do layer kicks on here, I will kind of run it into a bus, and then we'll start applying some multi-band compression via form of Maximus or just maybe even a preset of some sort, and we work it from there. Next up would be my snares. Now my snares, I did layer them a little bit, where it's just two Ad Brown samples, and I layered them so that way they kind of come in more there. The second one is shift it back slightly for more presence, kind of gives it more of a stereo kind of effect here. Same thing, EQ, a little bit of things. The third snare is actually an effects snare, and that is just for an effect to add a little bit of a pizzazz to the end of the like little 4-bar rhythm section I got going on. After that was going to be your hats. We can go to the hats here. And really with the hats, how I approach them, of course, you pan, you volume, and then you go ahead and I do a lot of velocity editing in depth with the hats, because it's really the way to make them sound very organic. So if you're looking to make your hat sound more organic, make sure you're playing with your velocities and then maybe shifting them and playing with your swing a little bit to add a little bit of a looser feel to them, if that's what you desire. People even do things like pitching them, you know, so anything really works, but do a little bit. It's kind of not really wise, just have them laid out, you know, not without like an intention. I would say you can get away with it, of course, but I think it's just bad producer habits if you don't kind of get to manually kind of messing with some of the options you have available to you inside of each sound that you mess with. Keep that in mind. And the same thing here, there's a little bit panning. EQ is all the same. It's just light EQ, probably none. I don't even EQ ads too much, but if I do, it's something like this, a little bit of highs on the trebles if it needs it, and I'll duck a little bit here that doesn't require it, and then we'll run it through to the stereo. We'll give it stereo here. Oh, this is the bus. Yeah, we'll go ahead and give it a little bit of stereo shaping presence as well, to just kind of widen them a little bit. It just depends really, but I do like my hats to be a little bit wider. And then after that, we're going to have a loop. We can listen to this loop right here. And yeah, it's a random Ad Brown progressive house loop that I found. I EQ'd it. Yeah, EQ'd it here, turned it down really low. Usually loops I need to turn down really low. They're just way too loud starting things off. Personal preference. But yeah, really, and only reason why I did this was just to kind of thicken up the drums overall itself. to make them sound a little bit more I guess beefier. I don't know. I it just kind of adds an extra layer for the ears to enjoy more than anything else. So personal preference, again, nothing big deal here, but loops can help kind of add a little bit of weight to the mix if if you're finding that you're a little bit light on your drums, or maybe you can use a little bit more of a bass boost. Maybe consider using a loop if you have them to kind of help add a little bit of interesting effects to your tracks. It's things that I do a lot of times. I do like losing loops. Next up here is going to be my white noise effects, and how I always do my white noise filter or generator is I just open up a 3x OSC or any subtractive synth that has a random waveform generator, white noise generator. You use that, and there's a couple of ways you could actually filter this out, because I think if you play this, if it's all the way up and your filter is not down, it's like ridiculously loud, so make sure you turn this down. You see it's like 30% volume here, and it's EQ'd, and then I have it running through a filter that I created, where it's actually hooked through the X knob, and then the X knob itself is it runs the cutoff and the resonance together. This helps me knock out two birds with one stone, because I like the resonance and the cutoff to be controlled individually when I do the white noise control. So I found this to be a pretty efficient way of doing that, where I don't have to be complicated with my waveform automations. So my mod X that's what's modulated, and this is of course the rise up for the transitions and my big effects. Okay, and then here with all the effects, basically they're all kind of trimmed and they're attached to the side chain. If we can, let's see if I can just mute them. There we go. And basically they're just selections I found, and you mix them in obviously to your taste. But, this is all mixing decisions. They ran to the verb here, and what I usually like to do is add a little bit of a reversal to them, and before I bring them in on some parts of them. Not all of them are like that, but some of them are. It's kind of up to you, but I like, like that one doesn't have one because it kind of goes off of the white noise coming into the play. So they're not always reversed, but some of them I think it's good to kind of pick them out and reverse them out to make them sound, to bring a little bit of expression and interest. The way that I do my effects is I really run them around my bars, how my songs are laid out and set up with the bars. So every little marker here is 8 bars, or yeah, 8 bars I think, and then every 2 will be 16, and so I kind of work in a 16 fashion, and that's how I kind of do my effects. And then once I have my 16, I kind of copy them across and go from there. And then the same thing though, the EQ comes along, and then the final one here of the effects is the chimes. And I believe that this is just because it makes it this is a unique addition to the track itself. They're real light and pretty. You barely hear them. You mix them in just enough so you can hear them, but not too loud, because they can quickly become overpowered. So this is just stuff to add a lot of like light sprinkle presence into your track, and makes them a little bit unique, so just keep that in mind. It's actually just pretty cool little tricks there. That's really it as far as like what sounds that I use and how I went about mixing all of this. There is a few things that I did a little bit special inside of the bridge. One of them is I just used a little bit of a random sound here. And then what I did was reason why is because I really do like to be a little bit unique or different when it comes to the bridge. And I feel like when the bridge, you have the most time the most time to be uh um expressible, I guess, expressed with your track. So you just sort of you sort of add a lot of things that you think are unique or cool to you to add a very interesting flavor. Like one of my fans, he was like, "Bro, this song is awesome until you added those weird sounds into the, at that weird part, And I was cracking up because, sorry, man, I'm a musician, like I sometimes you do great stuff and sometimes people question your decisions, and that's the beautiful part of it. Um, yeah, everything else here is really more advanced, I guess, but it's worth kind of going over. First, we'll go over my arrangement. You can see that there's an intro, and then from the intro, it starts into the beat. From the beat, it goes into the chorus. The chorus kind of repeats itself, and then it kind of goes back into a beat section or verse, back into a chorus, which it repeats, but that repeat section is going out. After that, we're going to a bridge. The bridge, I think, could be however long you can be, and you could be as complicated and fun as you want. But a big thing to think about when you're doing this and when you're being expressive is you still need to bring the track back to wherever you started from. So it is kind of important to recognize that inside of what you're doing. Like, you don't want to just make crazy stuff happen in the bridge because you need to tie it back together in the end. And this is really the progressive of progressive house. Learn to progress it here to the bridge. You degress it here, so you start simplifying the elements and taking them away. You can get super complicated here, but then you need to start taking them away at a certain point so you can put it back to the way it goes. After we get done with the bridge, however you want to do them, you're all fancy. You kind of reintroduce everything back in. The beat drops back into the game, and then your chorus, another little chorus section, which is a lot of people say is the most fanciest part of the track, where all the bells and whistles shine. This is where everything can speak the loudest if you want it to. It's entirely up to you. And then you have an outro, however you want to build that out. Now your timings and links and your selections of how you want to do it is up to you. I've been kind of doing this for however long, and I just like this layout, but there's tons of different ways to do it, but I strongly, strongly, strongly suggest getting you some kind of an arrangement template that's comfortable for you and following it, okay? Next here, I want to talk about my reverb and how I went about doing it. And at the very beginning, I do a standard like 250K high pass on it here. And then I use a Valhalla shimmer with max mix, big stereo. Mod depth and mod rate can be controlled kind of on standard, but the pitch mode, which is important to me, is bypassed. Some people don't mind it. I don't know how exactly, people really like to use it. I just don't use it myself that much. And then size, you can kind of edit your size and these kind of go hand in hand, your size and reverb mode. It's kind of worth playing with if you want to kind of play. You can even do your EQing here if you want it, but I just don't really mess with it. And then I compress it, okay? So this first compressor is literally just a gain compressor. It just turns it up. The second one is, you can see I have it thresholding here and I have stuff going on. And you can see the compression happening. I just have it turned up and then it's compressed down. This just kind of makes it so if nothing kind of crazy pokes out of your verb when it's coming into play, that's it. And then after that, you do some heavy EQing afterwards, okay? It doesn't have to be heavy, but you do need to make sure you EQ your verbs when you're sending them out and then you start compressing them. You do need to EQ because a lot of low information is going to get through and you don't want that. Not unless it's completely intentional, then by all means have fun. But otherwise, just make sure you pay attention to that. Overall here, I did not do much globally here. I did do a little bit of global EQ at the end. Very simple. There's nearly no compression on my buses, so there's no need to really go over that. But I do sometimes do a little bit of compression on the buses at the end of the day, and a little bit of post EQing as well. And also, I might throw a vocal in. There was no vocal loop that I felt was needed. Kind of will be over the top, in my opinion. But it's personal preference, okay? So that's really it. One of the biggest deals, not biggest deals here, but my kick and bass, I kind of mixed that to -10. That was my mixing where it mixed to, and then I mixed around that to reach about close to -6. Like, this was a little bit lower. I even have a little booster on here, but it's not really boosted that much. It's not boosted. I turned it down. But sometimes I do give it a little boost of 6 dB or so just to kind of help out my mixing, but you don't really need it. Like I usually end up turning it off more than anything, and then really what it becomes is it becomes a negative 6 dB limiter, where it just cuts off anything from negative 6 dB just for mixing purposes. It's obviously it never really even hits it, so it never really hits it. It's just I do this so it helps me when I go approach it in mastering phase. That's literally it. So if you have any questions about this, guys, be sure you let me know. And check out my website, Z8phyR.com. This is where the project files will be located. I will post everything regarding this project on my website, so be sure you check it out. The EP Night, which is the single that I talked about, just dropped Friday, and I have a code. Use code NIGHT, all right, NIGHT, when you buy this, okay? So when you go to buy it, it says discount code. Type in NIGHT, apply, and it gives you 50% off. Okay, now this is running just for this week only, and then I will to celebrate my EP coming out, and then we will maybe change it up, you know. So if you catch this video and you made it to the end, be sure you check out my EP on Bandcamp, Z8phyR.bandcamp.com, and let me know what you guys think about it. I really appreciate the love, everybody. I look forward to the next time you're hanging out together. I will do some more live streams. I'm still kind of back and forth whether I want to do YouTube or Twitch. Every other day I'm like YouTube, Twitch, YouTube. So we'll see. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. I'm going to be here. You can catch me on all the social medias, Twitter, Instagram. I'm on TikTok. I'm learning that, so follow me on TikTok at Z8phyR on every social media you can think of. It's massively appreciated, guys. Thank you so much, and girls. I hope you all have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your day, and I will see you on the next one. Bye, everybody.